Switch 2 sales just dropped 87% week over week in Japan according to official sales data. Yeah, that is a number that Nintendo definitely didn't want people to know, but it's true. In just 7 days, the Switch 2 went from selling 248,000 units to just 31,000 according to Famitsu. With a drop like that, we can't even call it a collapse. It's just the floor literally falling out from beneath them. So how does the Switch 2 go from a near record high to its worst week in months seemingly overnight? Well, the short answer is that the new price increase of the Switch 2 completely backfired. The real story though is a lot more interesting because it involves a brand new exclusive game that Switch 2 owners did not bother to buy, the biggest competitor Nintendo could possibly have coming out this holiday season, and one event probably 5 days from now that could decide how the entire back half of this year plays out for Nintendo. And that of course is the highly anticipated and most leaked Nintendo Direct ever. So let's break all this down and dive right into the data. Now the first place we have to start is the brand new data that dropped 2 hours ago at the time of recording this, and that is last week's Famitsu sales data. For those of you that don't know, Famitsu tracks retail sales data in Japan. We've talked about them many times on the channel so far. Lots of you should be familiar with them, and last week Switch 2 hardware sales in Japan came in at 31,751, which in a vacuum doesn't really mean anything until you look at the numbers from the week before. The prior week, May 18th to 24th, we can see that the hardware sales for the Switch 2 were nearly 248,000. That is objectively an 87% drop week over week in Switch 2 hardware sales. A drop of that magnitude must have an answer, and of course it does, but the more you dig into it, the more interesting the narrative of the Switch 2 turns out to be over the course of the next 6 months. Now on the surface level you could say, okay, well, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book launched during the week of the 18th, but as you can see, it didn't even sell 40,000 units. So we know that Yoshi is not a console seller. It didn't even beat Tomodachi Life, which at this point it had been out for a month already. And we'll talk more about Yoshi in just a minute because it is a key component of this story and a big piece of evidence for what we're going to talk about later. But in order to truly understand this massive drop in sales, we have to understand the actual timeline. And the key component here is that on May 8th 2026, Nintendo announced that they were going to increase the price of the Switch 2, notably in Japan as well as other regions, including the United States. Look who came to say hi. Hi, Tiger. Treat time for Tiger. Isn't it crazy how cats love these little brown crunchies? And also I want to take this moment to thank you guys for everyone who has been liking the videos and using the new hype feature. It really does mean a lot, so thank you. Now in Japan, the price increase would take effect on May 25th 2026, whereas the price increase in the United States, Canada and Europe would not take place until September 1st. So customers in Japan had only 3 weeks to prepare for an increase in price of 10,000 yen, which by the way is about $60. I know that off the top of my head at this point because I was just in Japan when they announced this price increase, and I saw firsthand the effect that this had on Switch 2 sales. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but okay, so we know that on May 8th a price increase was announced for May 25th. So let's take a look at Switch 2 sales before this announcement and Switch 2 sales after this announcement. The week of April 6th we'll see that the Switch 2 sold 52,000 units. The week of April 13th we'll see that the Switch 2 sold 44,000 units. The week of April 20th we'll see that the Switch 2 sold 45,000 units, and then the week of April 27th we will see that this extends to May 10th, and the reason for that is because of Golden Week. For those of you that don't know, that is a holiday week in Japan, so because Famitsu wasn't reporting during that week, they just combined 2 weeks worth of sales in one, and we'll see that the Switch 2 over the course of these 2 weeks sold 214,000 units. So this is the first data point that we see after the announcement of the price increase, and we see a massive bump in Switch 2 sales. Now it's also worth noting that historically Golden Week in Japan is a week where lots of consoles are sold anyway, so we sort of have a compounding effect here. 2 of the days within this time frame game, customers are literally panic buying the Switch 2 because of the announced price increase, and we also have the compounding effect of what would have already been a successful sales week during Golden Week. Following that, the week of May 11th, we'll see that the Switch 2 panic buying continued with 218,000 units sold, and all of this culminates right up through the week of May 18th, which ends right before the price increase with 247,000 units sold of the Switch 2. And then, like I said earlier, last week's sales fell to a cataclysmic level of 31,800. Okay, so now we have a more complete idea as to what actually happened. Sales were elevated for Golden Week, and then we saw a price increase announcement. Everybody went and panic bought the Switch 2, and so a bunch of demand for the Switch 2 was pulled forward because customers wanted to get their hands on the Switch 2 before the price went up. Last week was the first full week of the new Switch 2 pricing, and so of course demand is not going to be there. Hundreds of thousands of new Japanese customers just got their hands on a Switch 2, so last week was kind of the hangover from the frenzy buying that we saw in the weeks prior. And just as a side note, like I said, I was actually in Japan when this was announced, and while I was in Kyoto, Yoshi came out and I was at a Yodobashi camera store, and they had stanchions up for a massive line of customers lining up to buy the Switch 2 before the price increase. Every Don Quixote store that I went into had signs up saying that the Switch 2 was sold out. Don't even bother asking, they don't have anymore. So it was kind of interesting to see the panic buying in real time while I was there. And yes, of course, I had to stop by the Nintendo Kyoto store. I posted a picture about that over on my community post section of my channel. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, because some of you might be sitting there thinking, well, how do we know this is all just panic buying, right? Like, what if all these customers just decided that they wanted a Switch 2 now because, I don't know, Golden Week and also Yoshi came out, so maybe customers just rushed to the store to buy Yoshi? And that's a reasonable question to ask, and I'm not going to sit here and expect you to take my word for it that, oh, it was just panic buying and nobody's buying the Switch 2 on its own merit. But we can look at Yoshi and the Mysterious Book as evidence of the fact that actually people really are buying the Switch 2 purely to avoid the price increase. The first week that Yoshi hit shelves in Japan, it sold 39,661 units, which is almost the exact same number of units that Mario Tennis Fever sold in its first week, and everyone pretty much forgot that game even existed. That game, by all observable sales numbers, was not a super big hit. Okay, it simply wasn't. And then if we take a look at the second week sales, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book falls behind Tamagotchi Life yet again, Pokemon Pokopia, which is 3 months old at this point, and we see that Yoshi pulls in a measly 12,700 units in its second full week on the market. So let me get this straight. Between Golden Week and the announcement of the price increase, the Switch 2 sold over 700,000 more units, and Yoshi barely cracked 50,000 sales. I mean, let's just do some basic math here. The Switch 2 has sold almost 6 million units in Japan alone, and Yoshi has sold a combined total of 52,362 units. Now, those are physical units. I know that doesn't include digital, but okay, let's be generous and assume that the sales are a 60-40 split, 60% digital, 40% physical. That means Yoshi sold 131,000 units in Japan out of 5,865,231 known units. That's 2.2%. 2.2% of Switch 2 owners bought Yoshi. Even if the physical digital split is way off, even if you double that number, less than 5% of Switch 2 owners ended up buying Yoshi. So okay, even in the most charitable case possible, even if we take numbers into account that are definitely not true, we can say conclusively that Yoshi definitely did not increase the sales of the Switch 2. And in fact, if you look at some of the software that is on this list for the Switch 2, we don't see any of these titles getting a huge bump in sales as a result of this massive jump in Switch 2 sales anyway. It seems like Pokopia was the biggest beneficiary here, with Mario Kart World coming in second place. And by the way, just to put the nail in the coffin of the Yoshi argument, Yoshi on its second week does not find itself in the Amazon bestsellers in the video game category unless you scroll all the way down, go to the second page, and you'll see that Yoshi finds itself at number 84. So we don't have exact sales data for the United States or Europe or anything like that, at least as far as I know, but being number 84 here is shockingly bad bad, considering that the Amazon bestsellers list actually is skewed in favor of more recent releases. So for Yoshi to be behind things like the Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 bundle, Minecraft on the original Switch, Mario Kart World physical edition, by the way, and Pokemon Pokopia, yeah, I mean, this thing is, despite having its recency bias working in its favor, it is still all the way down at number 84 behind all of these other Switch 2 games. So Yoshi didn't sell well in Japan, and it really didn't sell well in the United States, even if it sold 4-to-1 digital versus physical. I'm not ready to call it a flop, but it is definitely tiptoeing towards flop territory. And frankly, I'm not even going to call Yoshi a bad game because, well, first of all, I haven't played it, but I have no reason to play it. Every single person that I've seen discuss Yoshi is like, yeah, it's cute, but it's clearly for babies. And that's fine, right? Like, diehard Yoshi fans are going to love the game because from everything I can tell, it is actually reviewing really well. It has a 7.9 user score over on Metacritic. Okay, so for a Yoshi title, it's apparently good, but again, it's actually for like little kids, like very, very small kids or absolute diehard Yoshi fans, and it appeals to basically nobody else. So it's not that the game is bad, it's just that there's not really an audience for it. There's not really an appetite for this Yoshi game because there's no challenge. Like there's no fail condition here, right? It's just like Pokopia. Like there actually are no stakes. There's no challenge. There's really no depth to dig your teeth into. Okay, so we've established that it's crystal clear. The sales of the Switch 2 over the last couple of weeks leading up to the price increase were just panic buyers. There's no evidence to support otherwise. There's no huge spike in game sales for any particular game. Even the most recent Switch 2 exclusive is underperforming probably everybody's expectations, including Nintendo. And this puts a lot of pressure on Nintendo for what is coming next week, and that is the highly leaked, highly discussed Nintendo Direct that is allegedly coming on the 9th of June. Now, I don't know for sure. One thing I will say is that every Nintendo influencer has been predicting this Nintendo Direct for the last 6 months. I wish I were kidding, but these guys, bro, every couple of weeks was a new Nintendo Direct rumor. They said it in January, in February, in March, definitely. Oh, it's definitely coming in March. Oh no, it's coming in April. Oh no, it got pushed back to May. These guys have been wrong for half a year straight. Okay, so I'm glad for them that they can finally sit back and say I told you so after being wrong for the last 6 months in a row. So okay, it seems like we're getting a Nintendo Direct next week, and I don't mean to exaggerate here, but this is probably the most important Nintendo Direct for the foreseeable future of the Switch 2, and the reason for that is because of what we just talked about. If everybody bought a Switch 2 fearing the price increase, but they didn't go out and buy a bunch of different games, then what that means is they're buying the Switch 2 with the hope that it will pay off in the future. They are hoping that at some point down the line there is going to be a game that comes out exclusively for the Switch 2, and those customers will be glad that they bought their Switch 2 all those months ago before the price increase. So what that means is this upcoming Nintendo Direct has to announce a game coming out this year that will justify hundreds of thousands, if not millions of customers around the world going out and panic buying a Switch 2 for fear that they'll want one later for a game that's not announced yet, and then they'll have to pay more money. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say that the Switch 2 doesn't have any great games. Donkey Kong Bananza is good, Mario Kart World is solid, but we are less than 24 hours away from the 1-year anniversary of the Switch 2 launching, and the 2 best games in the library are the 2 games that we got first. We've been talking about those 2 games since what, July and August of last year. We're in June of 2026, 1 year out from the Switch 2 release, and we haven't seen any big genre defining games since. If you contrast the Switch 2 lineup with the Switch 1 lineup at the 1 year mark, you'll find that the Switch 2 actually has more exclusives than the Switch 1, and in fact, with backwards compatibility involved, there's way more to play on the Switch 2 than on the Switch 1 after the first year, and that's not even to take into account all of the third-party support that the Switch 2 has gotten so far, which apparently is going to be ramping up later into this year. But it's not all about quantity, it's about quality. And if you look at the first year of the Switch 1 launch, we had generation defining games land in that first year. You had Breath of the Wild, which people are still playing to this day, and we had Mario Odyssey come around just a few months later. Just out of curiosity, I looked at what is most popular on YouTube over the last last 3 months worldwide between Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World versus Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, and you'll see that Breath of the Wild is the most popular by far. Second place is Mario Odyssey in yellow, third place is Mario Kart World, and fourth place is Donkey Kong Bonanza. So to this day, more people are watching content about Breath of the Wild and Odyssey. These games are like 9 years old at this point, and people are still consuming more content globally about them than the best games in the Switch 2's library. And I know you're screaming, what about Pokopia? Well, now that the launch hype has faded, that is fighting for third place with Mario Kart World. So even that game can't compete with the two genre-defining, generation-defining games that came out on the Switch 1 in its first year. And so when people say that the Switch 2 has no games, they don't mean literally. What they mean is they look at the current Switch 2 library, and to quote a recent Drake song, they say, man, skip. Kirby Air Riders, Hyrule Warriors, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, these are niche titles. And this is precisely why this June Nintendo Direct is so absolutely critical for the trajectory of the Switch 2, because right now, as it stands, there is nothing that is going to satisfy all of those hundreds of thousands of consumers coming down the pipeline. We know that Pokemon Winds and Waves was pushed back, I say that based off of leaks, but that was revealed to be coming out in 2027. So without a proper exclusive Pokemon game for the Switch 2, Pokopia is a spin-off. The two franchises that could really deliver for Nintendo this year would be a 3D Mario game or a brand new Legend of Zelda. And look, I don't know if either of them are going to be coming by the end of this year. I hope one of them is, but all signs point to no. All signs point to the fact that we probably won't be getting one of those two. And again, I hope I'm wrong here, because I love those franchises. I would love a new 3D Mario. I would love a brand new Zelda game. But if the leaks of this upcoming Nintendo Direct are to be believed, then really what we should be expecting is an Ocarina of Time remake or remaster, and that will absolutely be a crowd pleaser. In fact, I would find that incredible as well, even if they decided to remake the game with a new spin on it, similar to how they remade Final Fantasy VII, for example. It's not just a carbon copy. That's fine, but here's the thing. The stakes for the Switch 2 in the second half of 2026, literally, and I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but they quite literally could not be higher, because the competition that Nintendo is going to face on November 19th, 2026 is one that frankly would be impossible for them to compete against. Of course, I'm talking about Grand Theft Auto 6, which is locked in for November 19th, 2026. Now, we've seen delays. The meme is that who knows if it's actually coming, but based on all of the official verifiable information, Grand Theft Auto 6 is launching November 19th, 2026. It's coming to PlayStation 5 and it's coming to the Xbox series of consoles. It might come to Switch 2 later. Who knows if they could pull that off. It's definitely coming to PC later. But Grand Theft Auto 6 is not just the biggest game release in a long time. It is the single largest entertainment event that has happened across multiple industries probably since GTA 5. And I played GTA 5. I'm a casual fan of the franchise, but I didn't love it. So I'm not sitting here as a GTA fanboy. I'm saying objectively and factually, GTA 6 will be the biggest entertainment launch possibly in my lifetime. Now, normally Nintendo would be kind of insulated from something like this because they would be the more affordable option. They would be the cheapest thing on the market. They would have a new Mario game, a new Zelda game, a new Pokemon game. They would have their own special offering for a certain subsection of the gaming community that would support them no matter what. But as we talked about in this video, the Switch 2 was already the most expensive console they ever released, and by November it'll be $50 more expensive in the United States and Europe for an entry price of $500 and a bundled price of $550. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more Black Friday, Cyber Monday discounts this year, by the way. I'm calling it now. But anyway, the PlayStation 5 digital edition is $600. So if you look at a Switch 2 at $500 and a PS5 at $600, the price difference isn't crazy compared to what the Switch 1 was to its competitor. So okay, Nintendo is still the cheapest, but it's not by that much anymore. And then when you look at the product offering, GTA 6 is on PlayStation and Xbox. It's not on Nintendo, and Nintendo doesn't have the usual franchises that we would expect to push them through this holiday season unless something big is announced at this June Nintendo Direct. And again, even if they do have a big announcement, it has to come this year. It has to come in 2026. And yes, it has to be bigger than Fire Emblem. It has to be bigger than Splatoon, because as good as an Ocarina of Time remake or remaster is going to be, a remake of a 27-year-old Zelda game cannot stand its own against Grand Theft Auto 6, and the rest of the software lineup for the Switch 2, as we just talked about in this video, is more quantity than it is quality, and that's supported by the sales data of the software prior to all of this, the sales data of Yoshi that we see revealed from Famitsu, and the internet traffic and interest in some of the best Switch 2 games versus some of the oldest Switch 1 games. The Switch 2 price increase did actually work. The panic buying happened. I witnessed it personally firsthand when I was in Japan, but now with this upcoming Nintendo Direct, they have to justify to their customers why everyone went out and bought one, because based on the software sales data, including that of Yoshi, a lot of these customers are still waiting for a reason to justify their purchase. Your rent is due, Nintendo. Give the customers what they want. It's been a year at this point, and frankly, a lot of people are tired of waiting for the reason why they bought their Switch 2. If you didn't get Yoshi and you didn't get Pokopia, it has been collecting dust probably since Bananza, because a lot of people didn't get Hyrule Warriors either. Anyway, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, consider dropping a thumbs up on it. It really does help out the channel a ton, and you might think you're subscribed because you've seen a ton of my videos, but you're actually not. Double check down below.